Did you know that our unconscious has more to do with who we pick as a romantic partner than anything on our wish list? It's true. We end up picking a partner that we need, even if it feels like pure attraction and desire in the beginning. And the higher your ACE score, the more true this is. If you haven't had a chance to take the ACE test yet, I will be putting a link in the description at the end of the video. Because today we're going to discuss how what happened in childhood directly affects how much you and your spouse argue, or whether you're going to be with that same person forever, and more, so stay tuned. If you're new to the channel or haven't yet had a chance to join this great community all about emotional and financial well-being, do that now before we get started. Just click the little red subscribe button and the bell beside it to be notified as soon as we drop a latest video. Like many people, my favorite part of the relationship is the beginning, when you have that euphoric feeling of aliveness and wholeness, when everything feels exciting and breathtaking and giddy and life-altering and adventurous. When the person that you finally found is just as into you as you are to them. Life seems perfect, like everything makes sense and all dreams are going to come true. This is when we have those gusty twin flame or soulmate illusions. No high compares to the feeling of falling madly in love. It's like we slip into the state of unconsciousness where everything seems exciting and we want to play more and work less, and we spend money that we don't have, and we message or call our newfound love several times a day. Connection is the prime objective, and all other agendas seem insignificant. We'll often neglect our physical bodies, spend less time with friends and family, and have little or no interest in our jobs or careers. But then reality hits, and suddenly this person who seemed like he was going to be your whole world starts looking more like everything you've ever tried avoiding. So why is that? Well, here's where the science comes in. Because our subconscious has so much to do with whom we pick and why, we end up with someone who's the biggest trigger of old memories and past traumas. The reason for that is because this person is also the best chance you have for healing and recovery. You see, our subconscious has its own drive to restore the feelings of aliveness and wholeness that we came into this world with. To accomplish that, it must repair the damage done in childhood as a result of unmet needs. And the way it does that is to provide us with a partner who can give us everything our caretakers failed to. Every experience we have in childhood leaves a mark, especially negative ones. So our subconscious seeks healing by picking a person who reminds us of the very people who hurt or neglected us in the first place. Our subconscious also looks for someone who has traits that have been suppressed inside of us. If we're introverted, we look for someone who's outgoing. If we're disorganized or chaotic, we're attracted to someone who's calm and rational. But eventually, being around them stirs up that suppressed part of ourselves and the feelings that come with being suppressed. So we end up lashing out at our partners for being too outgoing or too rational. It would seem to make more sense for us to pick partners who had the traits that our caregivers lacked. But the subconscious knows that we can only exit through the wounds that were caused by deprivations in childhood. So it picks the perfect person to help us work through our wounds from childhood. Every child acquires psychic wounds that keep them from being a happy, fulfilled, healthy adult, and every marriage has to work through these. Unfortunately, some marriages end prematurely because a couple wasn't able to understand the true intent of marriage. Many hoped it would just be this one long extended honeymoon, but unfortunately that's not the case. Romance minus needs equals marriage. The problem is, divorce doesn't solve the issues in a relationship. We may get rid of a partner, but we take our issues with us and carry them into the next relationship and the next. Romantic love is the glue that initially binds two incompatible people together so that they'll do what's necessary to heal themselves and each other. A quick disclaimer here. If you are in an abusive relationship, divorce is sometimes the only solution. No one should stay in a destructive environment. My intent is to encourage couples with normal marital issues to see the relationship in a new light. Too many people break up right before the breakthrough. So often we hear that expression, people don't change. But if that were true, no one would ever grow. Growth only comes through change. The Gottman Institute has done compelling studies on marital issues. And what they found is very interesting. 69% of marital issues are never resolved, even for happily married couples. So what's the difference between those who make it and those who don't? We'll get to that in a minute, but first I want to talk about what I mentioned earlier, how ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences, exacerbate normal marital issues. ACEs are any adverse experience that a child endures while going through the developmental stage. This can be things like emotional neglect, physical or sexual abuse, violence in the home, addiction or mental illness of one or more caregivers, poverty, etc. The more of these a child suffered, the higher his or her ACE score. And again, if you've never been able to take the ACE test, I encourage you to do that at the end of this video because it will shine light on the chronic stresses that you face now as an adult. I talk more about ACEs in this video, so once you've taken the ACE test, I encourage you to go back and watch it. I'll put the link in the description so it's easy to find. Even in the best of circumstances, our parents aren't able to maintain perfect standards or to be available every minute to understand exactly what's needed or to meet every demand. Tired, angry, depressed, busy, ill, distracted, our parents fail to sustain our need for security and comfort. Every unmet need causes fear and pain, and as children, we have no idea how to stop it and restore that feeling of safety. So as a response, we adopt coping mechanisms ranging from constantly crying to get attention to withdrawing and denying that we have any needs or feelings. We learn to do whatever is necessary to gain love and approval. So we repress or disown parts of ourselves that society finds unacceptable or unlovable. Our sense of aliveness diminishes, and we end up as shadows of our whole true selves. All of us were wounded in childhood to some extent, and we're now just coping to try to make it through the world and relationships. But part of our true selves is suppressed in the unconscious. We look grown up, we have jobs and responsibilities, but we're walking wounded, trying to live fully while unconsciously hoping to restore that sense of joyful aliveness that we began with. The founders of the ACE study created a pyramid chart to show how adverse experiences compound as life continues. So the first level of the chart is just the adverse experiences themselves. The next level up shows how development is disrupted. Children with ACEs often experience poor physical and mental development due to abuse, trauma, and neglect. The next level up is social, emotional, and cognitive impairment. Some of these children as adults will experience poor coping skills, attachment disorders, cognitive impairments, and mental illnesses. Many will go on to adopt health risk behaviors such as smoking, alcohol use, or promiscuity. And these are just used as coping mechanisms to help them deal with the difficult experience they find themselves in, or to numb the pain of the past. Addiction is any process that succeeds in removing intolerable reality, taking priority in your life, and taking time and attention away from other priorities like relationships or responsibilities that you end up neglecting. Then the next level up on the pyramid sometimes takes years to surface: disease, disability, or social problems. These are typically caused by both poor development and risky behavior choices, but are made worse by low income, low cognitive ability, low achievement, and low employment prospects. As you can see, the experiences we have in childhood compound, making it all the more likely that we will suffer from mental or physical disabilities. The very top of the pyramid is a sad little triangle with the words early death in it. People with high ACEs have a very much higher chance of premature death by an average of 20 years. Once we understand that our present struggles are tied to childhood experiences, we can begin to face these things to experience healing either individually or as a couple. The good news is it's not guaranteed that just because you have a high ACE score means that you have to go through all of this. It's just that the chances are far greater. So how do these things impact marriage? Well, poor physical or mental health places a burden on any relationship. Poor social and coping skills can lead to increased stress and the likelihood of bad conflict management. Unhealthy attachment styles formed in childhood make it harder to form marital bonds and trust. And financial strain decreases marital happiness and increases stress. Adults who have high ACE scores often come with more sexual baggage as well. Teen pregnancies, unplanned pregnancies, STDs, a higher risk of cheating, which is an addictive behavior, and a higher number of past partners. Also, those who suffered or witnessed abuse growing up have a higher prevalence of carrying that into adult relationships, either as the victim or the perpetrator. This is called transgenerational trauma. Thankfully, research has shown that many adults who suffer ACEs find that marriage is a place of healing and restoration from trauma. Marriage has the ability to teach an ACE survivor about emotional regulation and better coping skills, and it also provides them with more motivation not to engage in risky behaviors. This can then stop the ACE pyramid at those early levels, reducing the likelihood of moving up the pyramid to illness and early death. But it's necessary for spouses to team up to counteract negative effects and to shift the trajectory away from these cascading problems toward healing. So how do we do this? The potential in intimate love relationships is to discover the triggers that were formed in childhood and disarm them. To locate them, however, it's generally necessary to trip over them. But if unaddressed, power struggles can become this continual source of resentment and frustration. If the power struggles continue unchecked, there are fairly predictable outcomes. Many couples adapt just by living a parallel existence. On the surface, these relationships might seem fairly non-conflictual and peaceful. These are the couples who are in a long-term relationship but rarely connecting. They may live in the same house, sleep in the same bed, but true connection rarely happens, and communication is limited to day-to-day essentials. Conflict is avoided, problems are not addressed. Another common scenario is an endless cycle of explosive fighting and reconciling. These relationships have the potential to be very intense, both in the conflict of separation and the passion of reconciling. Unconsciously, one or both partners might be picking fights just so that reconnecting energy can occur. Although this results in at least momentary closeness and sometimes great sex, the intimacy is temporary as the cycle repeats itself over and over again. And of course, like we mentioned before, the last resort is divorce or long-term separation. And many couples will go through years of low-level conflict, pain, frustration, and never address it on a conscious level until one partner reaches their limit and either leaves, files for divorce, or cheats. In order to get past these or avoid them, a couple has to work together to identify where and how some of these conflicts have come from. If they choose to do this, they have the opportunity to create some specific and targeted goals for healing and recovery. The frustrating thing is so often only one partner has the desire to dig deeper and do the work necessary to fix things. While one person can affect change, this is often a very large undertaking and requires substantial emotional energy. Even then, the results aren't guaranteed. Ideally, a couple comes to a place where they both agree to go through the process of recovery together. One of the first steps is to recognize that most of our defensive reactions are out of proportion to the real threat. In general, defense postures are things we learned in childhood when they were actually effective. Unfortunately, these same adaptations now limit and sabotage the marital relationship. We create what we defend against. In other words, defensiveness creates more defensiveness unless the other party has the consciousness to stop the attack. One partner's greatest need in a relationship is often met with the other partner's greatest defense. If we see our partner as the enemy, we will likely treat them that way and be treated that way in return. This cycle must cease if the relationship is to move in the direction of healing. Another important step is to make a commitment to treat each other with mutual dignity, respect, and a joint commitment toward healing and growth. A true potential of a relationship exists, but we have to be willing to stretch beyond our learned defensive patterns. Becoming aware of ourselves and our defensiveness is key. It changes everything. Another key step is to learn to understand each other's feelings and childhood wounds more empathetically. This allows you to heal yourself and your relationship and move toward what the Gottman Institute calls a more conscious relationship. When we can understand that we have chosen our partners to heal certain painful experiences, and that by healing those painful experiences is the end to longing, we'll have taken one of the biggest steps toward real love. It's also helpful to understand that conflict is supposed to happen. Everything in nature is conflict. Conflict is a sign that the psyche is trying to survive and get its needs met and become whole. Conflict only need be destructive if we don't understand this. And the last step is to establish safety in the relationship, which is easier said than done. To keep couples from slipping into the automatic defensive postures, it's important to apply compassionate listening. This is where each partner expresses what they feel regarding a trauma or a conflict, and then tries to repeat back what the other partner has said, validating that person's reality, even if they don't agree with it. As you discuss each other's feelings, it's important to remember that your partner is just reacting from patterns that he or she learned in childhood, adaptations that helped him or her stay safe and survive. As you better understand and empathize with your partner, you'll find that self-knowledge follows. The two of you will start to see how each of you contributes to the drama that has become your relationship, which is just the collective psychic drama from each person's journey to self-awareness and recovery. Once this has been established, then it's possible for each of you to ask the other for behavior changes, things that will meet each other's needs. Obviously, this will be difficult at first, but the more we apply compassionate listening and send each other cues of safety, the more enriching and satisfying the marriage will become, and the more healing will happen naturally. All of us were born with a biological need for belonging and attachment, and marriage can be the best solution to those needs, but it takes focused attention and purposeful effort. Good marriages don't just happen. They are works of intention. I know we covered a lot of ground today, but hopefully this information was insightful and has given you something to work with toward a bright and rewarding future with your partner. If you found it helpful, please let me know by giving the video a like and putting a big yes in the comments. And also feel free to ask questions there. I do read as many comments and respond to them as possible. I'm going to put a list of resources in the description to help you in this journey of recovery, whether individually or as a couple. That way, if you want to get started today, you can. Thank you for sticking with me today, and if you'd like to learn more, be sure to check out my other videos all about emotional well-being. See you in the next video. Bye!